If you haven't watched the previous video in this series, I highly recommend that you go and do. So for a quick recap, there are a ton of Kamen Rider weapons out there, specifically swords. So many swords that it's impossible to rank them in any singular video. So today, I'm going to be ranking the swords that secondary riders can use in their base form. All the same rules from the primary Heisei Riders one apply here. So anyways, let's get started. The GS-03 Destroyer, used by G3. The cool metal design and kind of the folded up blade aesthetic, it reminds me of the Gundam Exia and what its sword looks like. And for being that same kind of cool looking sword, I have to give it high praise. It goes into A tier for being cool and mechanical looking and having that folding mechanism. I forgot Knight had two swords, so I think it's very interesting the differences between the two. Dark Visor, the one he actually inserts cards into, I think is like pretty near perfect. It's got the perfect color scheme. It has the perfect level of detail without being too busy but not being too simplistic. And the overall proportions of it are pretty good for your average rider weapon. In fact, it's so good that they basically just retooled it in white for Fem's Visor for the Ryuki episode final movie. It's one of the best card visors in all of Ryuki, and for that, it deserves to go into S tier. Yeah, Wing Lancer, that big ass lance that he uses Sword Vent to summon. I like the idea of it being like this big ass lance sword, but I don't know, it just feels a little bit too simplistic and bland compared to a lot of the other sword vents in Ryuki. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either. It's middle of the road, so C tier. Oh, the Kaiser blade gun. Oh, it's so good. I mean, that X design is pretty much perfect as is, and then the blade pops out, and then it makes it even look more cool, the whole reverse grip thing it's got going on. My only gripe is the same one I have with the Fi's Edge, in that it has like this silver backing on the actual blade itself that I think kind of ruins the whole like neon aesthetic to it. But other than that, it's like near perfect. It's an A tier, definitely. Now for our next one, we have to go all the way to Kabuto to get our next weapons, which are the Attack Double Calibers. I find the swords being on the shoulders a little bit like jarring and distracting, but you know, this is ranking the actual swords themselves, not how they look on the suit. I mean, they're pretty simple, but they're not too simple, and they go pretty well with Attack's whole theming and color scheme. Good, not great, B tier. Zero Gasher Saber Mode. Wow, this is quite the big boy. You know what? Unlike Den-O Sword, I actually really like this design. It fits the color motif of Zeronos, and it uses a lot of negative space very well, which is something that you don't really say about Kamen Rider designs, about them having space that's not used being used well. It looks pretty intimidating, so I put it in B tier. Oh, the Excalibur. This thing just has a whole weird mishmash of clashing colors and design motifs that I'm not a fan of at all. I feel like it pulls some of them together, but it doesn't pull all of them together very well. I mean, I give it an A for effort, but I give it like a C tier for the actual look of it. Come on, man. Engine Blade is an easy S tier. Do I gotta explain this? I mean, that beautiful mechanical detailing, that gorgeous silver paint, those beautiful curves, and it manages to have a Gaia memory slot in it without ruining any of what I previously mentioned. Axel picking up the sword out of the ground the first time he transforms is probably one of the most badass Kamen Rider moments ever. Oh, the Dice Saber. Listen, Nito, I love ya, and I love Beast's suit, but the Dice Saber just sucks. I hate how much of the dice part of the Dice Saber is the emphasis, and the actual like sword part of the Dice Saber just looks so pathetically weak. And not to mention that ring reader on the side is another part that is incredibly distracting. It's kind of sad when I get more excited to see the finisher and what animals the weapon summons itself than actually seeing the sword be used. Straight to D tier. Does Baron's banana lance count as a sword? I guess I'll just put it here anyway. I kind of like the whole peeled banana aesthetic it's got going on, but what I love even more is that that's not entirely what the weapon is. The rest of the weapon has kind of like this really nice looking white to it that just happens to have a banana peel design as the hilt. I can't really imagine Baron without this weapon, so I have to put it in A tier for how clean it looks. Gashikan sword. It's not the worst thing ever. I mean, it's got that tacky look all the X-Aid weapons have, but at the same time, the whole fire and ice thing and switching between them, I actually really think brings this weapon on a level above probably most of the other of the X-Aid weapons. It's good enough, C tier. Beat Cloza. I really like how it builds off the aesthetic of Cross, but also does its own thing with kind of the whole beat rhythm thing. It even somehow kind of works with his other forms that he uses. And they've actually made the bottle reader not at all intrusive to the design, even when you put a full bottle in there. I love this thing. It's great. It belongs in A tier. And that's it. There are still a ton of Kamen Rider swords out there to rank. Now I want to do more of these, but if you want to motivate me a little more so I can make these videos faster, please leave a like and comment that you want to see more stuff like this. So anyways, guys, that's it, and have a good day.